Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still feel off balance? Like no matter how much you plan, work, or try to keep up, there's this underlying restlessness that never seems to go away. Maybe the answer isn't in the next productivity hack. Maybe it's in the stillness we've been taught to ignore. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is pause. Let's talk about the one thing no one teaches us, yet everyone needs: a tranquil mind, and how it holds the secret to a truly balanced life. We live in a world that celebrates movement. The faster we go, the more we seem to believe we're achieving. We scroll faster, talk faster, respond faster, and somewhere along the way, we start to confuse speed with progress. But there's a hidden cost. When everything moves at the speed of urgency, we lose sight of what actually matters. We're constantly reacting, adjusting, firefighting, but rarely reflecting. And in that storm of activity, we forget that clarity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from pausing long enough to see clearly. Stillness, in its simplest form, is the act of creating space. Space between thought and reaction, between emotion and action, between the noise of the world and the voice within. That space isn't empty, it's sacred. It allows us to observe rather than absorb, to notice patterns we've been blind to, and to question the assumptions we've taken for granted. Most people are so caught up in their mental traffic that they never realize they're being driven by it. Stillness is the moment you step out of the car and ask, "Where am I even going?" When we are still, the mind begins to settle like muddy water in a glass. At first, everything swirls, uncomfortable and chaotic. But if we don't stir it, if we simply sit, things begin to clear. Thoughts stop competing. Emotions become distinguishable. Desires, fears, and priorities start to surface, not because we forced them, but because we allowed them. It's in this settling that we begin to distinguish what is real from what is reactive. And that is where clarity begins, not in force, but in surrender. Stillness isn't passive. It's not laziness or avoidance. It's one of the most active and courageous choices we can make. Because to be still is to face what we've been running from. The noise we avoid through distraction. The decisions we delay through busyness. The truths we silence with endless activity. Stillness demands we meet ourselves without a filter, without performance. And for many, that's far more terrifying than facing the chaos outside. Clarity is not about having all the answers. It's about having enough space to ask better questions. Stillness helps us zoom out, to see the bigger picture, to recognize that maybe the problem we're trying to solve isn't the real problem. Maybe the thing we're chasing isn't actually what we want. Maybe the conflict we're stuck in isn't about who's right, but about what's hurting. These shifts in perspective don't come through noise. They come through quiet. One of the greatest myths we've been sold is that clarity is a result of thinking harder. But the truth is, most of our confusion isn't a lack of intelligence. It's a lack of stillness. We don't give ourselves time to process. We jump from problem to solution, from task to task, from notification to notification, without ever truly hearing our own thoughts. And when the mind is constantly stimulated, it becomes cluttered. Not with junk, but with fragments, half decisions, unresolved emotions, unacknowledged needs. Stillness allows these pieces to come together. In that stillness, we reconnect with our intuition. That quiet, steady voice that doesn't shout, but always knows. It gets drowned out when we're in a rush. But when we slow down, when we listen, it gently nudges us toward what feels aligned, what feels right. Clarity doesn't come from external validation. It doesn't come from endless opinions or analysis. It comes from that grounded sense of inner knowing, cultivated only when the mind is quiet enough to listen. Many people associate clarity with certainty, but real clarity is deeper than that. It's not about being sure of the future. It's about being sure of yourself. You may not know exactly what's coming, but you know who you are in the face of it. You trust your values, your instincts, your pace. And that trust isn't built in the middle of chaos. It's built in silence, in reflection, in stillness. Stillness is where clarity and courage meet. Because once we see clearly, we can no longer hide behind confusion. We can no longer pretend we don't know what we want, what we need, or what needs to change. Clarity demands action, but only after alignment. It gives us the confidence to say no to what distracts, and yes to what deeply matters. It clears the fog, so the next step, not the entire path, but the next right step can reveal itself. Most people search for clarity outside of themselves in books, in experts, in busy schedules. But what they often need isn't more information. It's space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to be still long enough to hear what they already know, but have been too distracted to acknowledge. And it all begins not with striving, but with stillness. Balance is one of those words we throw around without questioning what it really means. We imagine a scale, equal weights on both sides. Work on one, life on the other. We try to split our days evenly, allocate time fairly, and spread ourselves across obligations like butter on toast. But we're often left exhausted, not balanced. That's because balance was never about dividing everything equally. It's about aligning our energy with what actually matters. And often that has less to do with quantity and everything to do with intention. Most people confuse a full calendar with a full life. They pack their days with meetings, messages, tasks, and responsibilities, believing that productivity equals purpose. But it doesn't. You can be incredibly busy and still feel deeply unfulfilled. You can get everything done and still feel like something's missing. That's the trap of doing more. Because when we do more without direction, we end up moving further away from ourselves. Balance isn't found in the hustle. It's found in the moments when we ask, why am I doing this? Every task, every commitment, every yes should be measured not by how much time it takes, but by how deeply it aligns with our values. Are we doing it because we believe in it, or because we're afraid to disappoint? Are we saying yes because it matters, or because silence makes us anxious? True balance comes from choices that reflect who we are, not just what we're capable of handling. Doing less isn't the solution if we're still doing the wrong things. Cutting down on commitments doesn't mean much if those commitments don't serve our deeper purpose in the first place. We often glorify minimalism as the answer, but minimalism without meaning is just emptiness. What brings balance is not fewer things, but fewer distractions. Not a smaller to-do list, but a clearer one. Not slowing down for the sake of it, but because it allows us to walk in the right direction. We've been taught to measure value by volume. More work equals more worth. More hours equals more dedication. But this mindset leads to burnout, not balance. We forget that our time is not renewable. Every minute we give away to something unimportant is a minute we steal from what truly matters: our relationships, our health, our creativity, our peace. Balance is about protecting those sacred things from being buried under the urgent, the noisy, and the trivial. What matters is different for everyone. For one person, it might be time with family. For another, it might be creative expression. For someone else, it could be solitude, movement, learning, or service. There is no universal formula. Balance is deeply personal. But what's universal is the need to stop and reflect. What truly feeds me? What drains me? Without that inner audit, we risk living a life that looks full but feels hollow. When we focus on what matters, something beautiful happens. Effort feels lighter. We stop dragging ourselves through the day. Instead, we're drawn by purpose. It doesn't mean life becomes easy, but it does become meaningful. And meaning is what gives us the energy to move through difficult seasons without collapsing. Meaning gives weight to our actions, not just pressure. We often assume balance is about saying no more often. And while no is a powerful word, the deeper question is, what are we saying yes to? Balance is built by the strength of our yes. A clear yes gives us focus. It eliminates the unnecessary, the misaligned, the performative. It roots us in priorities that matter not just today, but in the long arc of who we are becoming. A balanced life isn't symmetrical. Some days will be messy. Some seasons will be heavier than others. That's okay. Balance isn't about perfect proportions. It's about conscious presence. Are we where we need to be fully? Are we giving our energy to the things that give something back, not just in reward, but in meaning? Those are the questions that help us live with both peace and purpose, even in the chaos. We don't find balance by withdrawing from life. We find it by engaging with it intentionally, by choosing not to react to everything, by getting clear on what matters and courageous enough to protect it. That's not passive. That's leadership of self, of time, of energy. It's not always visible, but it's always powerful. And it starts when we stop trying to do it all and start choosing what truly counts. We often blame the world for our restlessness. The constant stream of headlines, the opinions on social media, the demands from work, family, and society. It feels like the noise is everywhere, buzzing, shouting, pulling. But noise isn't just what happens outside of us. It's also what we carry within. And more often than not, it's our inner static that amplifies the volume of the world around us. You see, the same comment can land differently depending on our internal state. When our mind is calm, we can hear criticism without crumbling. When our heart is steady, we can witness chaos without absorbing it. But when we're already overwhelmed, uncertain, or insecure, even a whisper feels like a scream. That's not about the world. It's about our inner wiring at that moment. The noise outside doesn't change. Our capacity to hold it does. We all have an inner dialogue running, often unnoticed. It asks questions like, am I enough? What if I fail? What will they think? These whispers of fear, comparison, and doubt shape the way we interpret the world. And when that dialogue is loud, the external world feels threatening. Everything becomes a trigger. We start reacting, not to reality, but to the stories we've been telling ourselves. Sometimes we believe that if we could just control our environment, quieter surroundings, fewer distractions, more supportive people, we'd find peace. But real peace doesn't come from silence outside. It comes from silence within. Because when the inside is settled, we can navigate even the loudest environments with presence and grace. We stop needing the world to be calm in order for us to be calm. The irony is that many of us spend our lives trying to escape noise by changing our surroundings. We move cities, switch jobs, rearrange schedules. But if we don't confront the internal noise, it follows us everywhere. That anxiety, that constant urge to prove something, that pressure to keep up, they travel with us. They color every experience. And until we turn inward, the volume never really goes down. Inner noise is born from unresolved tension. It comes from the parts of ourselves we haven't fully accepted, the emotions we suppress, the truths we avoid, the expectations we silently carry. It's like an orchestra that's always warming up, never quite playing the same tune. And when that noise is loud, the world feels like it's constantly pushing us, even when it isn't. The truth is, we often mistake internal noise for external conflict. We think someone else made us feel inadequate, when in reality, their words just echoed our own inner doubts. We think life is too fast, when really, we're the ones sprinting in circles. The world may present challenges, but it doesn't define our experience of them. That definition is shaped by the inner state we bring to it. There's a reason some people can remain grounded in the middle of a crisis, while others unravel over minor inconveniences. It's not about strength or weakness. It's about the quality of the inner space they've cultivated. A quiet mind can filter chaos. A noisy one magnifies it. And when we learn to listen to ourselves more clearly, the world becomes less threatening, less overwhelming, less urgent. This is why inner work matters. Not for some spiritual high, not to feel superior, but because a clear inner space becomes a sanctuary. It becomes the filter through which everything else passes. The quieter that space is, the more discerning we become. The more peace we find in our responses. We stop chasing quiet moments and start carrying quiet minds. And that changes everything, not just how we feel, but how we show up. Most of what we call overwhelm isn't about how much is happening. It's about how much we're holding inside. Our minds are full, not because the world is too loud, but because we haven't made room inside ourselves. The outside noise will always exist, but how loud it feels, that's a mirror, and the reflection always begins within. Life doesn't follow blueprints. It doesn't consult our plans or wait for us to be ready. It moves in waves, some gentle, some crushing, and none of them arrive on our timeline. We try to forecast, predict, prepare, but still, it catches us off guard. That's the nature of life. It's wild, unpredictable, and beautifully indifferent to our expectations. Control is a comforting illusion, but the truth is, much of life happens beyond our reach. We spend so much of our energy trying to manage the uncontrollable. We micromanage details, worry over outcomes, and replay conversations as if that will rewrite the past. We try to outrun uncertainty by staying busy, staying ahead. But no amount of effort can prevent what life decides to send our way. Illness, loss, change, disappointment. These aren't personal failures, they're the texture of being human. What we can choose, moment by moment, is how we respond. Not out of reaction, but with presence. We can choose how we carry ourselves when things don't go as planned. We can choose the mindset we bring to challenges, the posture we take in the face of uncertainty. That's where our power lies, not in controlling the waves, but in how we learn to stand as they hit. Some people meet chaos with panic, others with poise. Some crumble under pressure, others become clearer. What makes the difference? It's not strength or intellect, it's inner orientation. It's whether we've trained ourselves to pause before reacting, whether we've created the emotional space to breathe before deciding. Because while we can't stop life from being life, we can stop ourselves from being swept away by every storm. There's a certain dignity that comes from choosing our response. It's quiet, not loud. It doesn't always change the outcome, but it always changes the experience. When we take ownership of our reactions, we reclaim agency even in the face of powerlessness. We stop being victims of circumstance and start becoming authors of our presence. This is not about denial. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about learning to meet difficulty without becoming it, to feel deeply without being drowned, to grieve fully without collapsing. Life will hand us moments we didn't ask for, but how we meet them determines whether they become defining or defeating. Every moment in life offers us a mirror, not to see what's happening to us, but to see who we are in the face of it. Do we shrink or do we rise? Do we close or stay open? Do we react from fear or respond from principle? These are the questions that shape the quality of our lives, not the events, but the character we bring to them. Sometimes what breaks us isn't the event itself, it's our resistance to it. We spend so much energy wishing things were different, fighting what already is. But peace doesn't come from resistance. It comes from meeting life where it is, not where we wish it was. From saying, this is what's here, and I will meet it with who I choose to be. The people who seem unshaken by life aren't untouched by difficulty. They've just practiced meeting life with presence rather than panic. They've trained themselves to respond rather than react. That kind of strength doesn't come from control. It comes from surrendering the illusion of control and focusing instead on what's real. Attitude, mindset, integrity, intention. We may not get to write every chapter of our story, but we get to shape the tone. We get to choose what kind of character we play in our own lives, not by controlling the plot, but by showing up with courage, clarity, and calm. Life may surprise us, but how we meet it, that's always ours to decide. We often treat peace as something to arrive at. A far-off place we'll reach once everything calms down. We say, when work slows down, I'll breathe, or once this is over, I'll feel better. But tranquility doesn't wait on circumstances. It doesn't emerge at the end of chaos. It must be practiced within it. It's not a finish line, it's a way of moving through the world, step by step, moment by moment, with intention. The mistake we make is assuming that peace is the result of everything going our way. That if we fix the external, get the job, fix the relationship, organize the schedule, we'll finally feel calm inside. But real tranquility isn't built on outcomes. It's built on habits. The small choices we make every day, how we breathe, how we pause, how we protect our energy, how we say no to noise that doesn't belong to us. It takes effort to be still. It takes effort to unplug, to close the laptop when our mind tells us to do one more thing. It takes strength to sit with our own thoughts instead of numbing them. Tranquility is not passive. It's not a gift we stumble into. It's something we choose, often in the middle of things that try to steal it. And that choice doesn't happen once. It happens over and over again. There's a discipline in how we start our mornings. The tone we set before the world sets it for us. Whether we reach for silence or for the screen. Whether we begin in rush or in rhythm. These rituals shape more than our day, they shape our nervous system, our ability to respond instead of react. Tranquility grows in these quiet margins where no one is watching, but everything is being built. The same is true for how we end our days. Do we carry the weight of unfinished tasks into our rest? Do we allow the mind to run unchecked until we fall asleep exhausted, only to wake up in the same cycle? Or do we create space to empty, to release, to return to center? The discipline of tranquility is not rigid. It's gentle, but it is consistent. And that consistency is what makes it powerful. Even in the middle of our day, tranquility asks something of us. It asks us to slow down when everything urges us to speed up, to breathe before responding to that email, to step outside for a moment of sun instead of pushing through another hour of noise. These are not grand gestures. They are subtle decisions. But over time, they create a foundation strong enough to hold us when life gets heavy. We live in a culture that rewards urgency, that applauds the person who can do the most in the least amount of time. But tranquility resists that pressure. It doesn't reject ambition, it redefines it. What if ambition wasn't about doing more, but about doing what matters with clarity and calm? What if success wasn't speed, but depth? This is the quiet discipline tranquility invites us into. It also requires emotional boundaries. The discipline to not carry what isn't ours. The discipline to not absorb every energy in the room. To recognize when we're taking on more than we're built for, not because we're weak, but because we're human. Tranquility is sustained by protecting our inner space like sacred ground. That means curating not just what we do, but what we allow in news, voices, expectations, even our own inner critic. Tranquility is not the absence of noise. It's our ability to stay centered in the middle of it. It's the practice of anchoring ourselves in breath, in awareness, in values, no matter what the world is doing around us. And like any discipline, it requires repetition. There will be days when we fall out of rhythm, when our thoughts race, when our calm slips. But tranquility is never lost. It waits patiently for us to return. In this way, tranquility becomes less of a place and more of a posture. It's how we carry ourselves, not where we go. It's not found in a retreat or vacation or single breakthrough. It's built in the daily moments where we choose presence over panic, intention over impulse, breath over reaction. It's the quiet strength of someone who has learned to create peace, not wait for it.
We often search for life's answers in the external, in routines, in goals, in the opinions of others. But what we've explored reminds us that the quality of our life is shaped not by how much we control, but by how deeply we understand ourselves. A tranquil mind isn't something we stumble upon, it's something we train. And balance isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. Each day, life will pull us in directions we didn't ask for. But the strength we build within determines whether we sway or stay grounded.
Stillness is not weakness, it is clarity. Doing what matters isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. The volume of the world doesn't define us, it reflects us. And peace isn't something we finally reach at the end of the noise. It's something we practice in the middle of it. We cannot choose everything that happens to us, but we can always choose how we meet it with intention, with presence, with grace. Tranquility isn't out there, waiting to be found. It lives in our choices, in our boundaries, in our breathing. It's not built in a day, it's built daily. And if we're willing to return to that discipline again and again, quietly and gently, we begin to shape a life not just of achievement, but of meaning. Not just of motion, but of depth. A life where the mind rests and the soul listens. A life, finally, in balance.